We're not going to win awards for layouts, but what it does have going for it is that it's a small community newspaper that's supported by its community. And it's a free publication supported entirely by advertising, and it's only good news. And I had been in newspapers for 20 years before the Beecher. And one of the things they talked about in journalism school was burnout. And they said, you've got to find a way. This is a tough profession. This is a profession that will wear you down, and it has the potential for burnout. You have to figure out what it is you want to do when that hits. And the Beecher came along at a perfect time. The Beecher, as you may or may not know, has been around really since the start of Long Beach. Right around the time that Long Beach started, it's the 100th anniversary this year. It was birthed as the Long Beach Billows, and it was very much a sort of, here's who is in town, here's who is playing golf. Johnny Weissmuller, who was Tarzan, was swimming at the Roman Plunge, that kind of stuff. And then it evolved later on to the Long Beecher, which was run by Harriet Patterson for many years. And then the Montgomery family took over in 1985, and it's been with the Montgomerys ever since then. And their sons, Tom and Don, still run the newspaper. I did not realize before starting there that the Beecher is two businesses in one. It's a newspaper that comes out once a week, and it's also a printing press for business cards, menus, brochures, flyers, all that kind of stuff. Our major clients are like Horizon Bank and the city and the park department. So it's two in one. The Beecher, when I started, they told me something. This is our mantra: no police, no crime, no religion, no politics, no nothing negative. It is just simply, here's what's going on in the community, here's things you can go do, and here's who's doing it. And so it's about art. Matt has been featured many times in the Beecher, yes, for projects related to Barker Civic Center, for Uptown Artist Lofts. We write about art, we write about plays, we write about concerts, we write about books, we write about movies. Anything that you might want to do is what we write about. It's a very small staff. As the editor, I am responsible for the content, deciding what you read. I edit all the copy, I edit all the press releases that come in, and I work with the advertisers, which we call display advertisers. Patrick's Grill is a display advertiser. They have an ad that runs every week. And the classified advertisers, the landscapers and stuff like that. Again, it is entirely feature oriented, and it's strictly good news. And I love that, because right before, I'd been at the News Dispatch for 15 years. This is going back, I don't know if you remember, but there was a 4-year-old girl who had been abused by her parents and put into a sleeping bag and abandoned in a room, and she died. Can't tell you her name, but when I was editing that story and writing the headline, that's when I hit the burnout point. That's when I thought, I cannot do this anymore. I just cannot. And actually, I became very ill right after then. And I have Crohn's disease. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. It's an intestinal disease, and it took about 1.5 years to kick it back into remission. And then right when I started going into remission and I thought, what am I going to do? The Beecher job just kind of dropped into my lap as a gift. So it's been an absolute blessing. We have a circulation of 4,100. We go to Furnaceville and Beverly Shores. We go throughout Michigan City and LaPorte, and then we go heavily along every beach community up to New Buffalo, and then up the Red Arrow Highway. And so we've had the opportunity to write about entertainers that come to the Acorn Theater. We've written about performances and shows at the Lebesnick Center. We've run about Barker Mansion, Barker Civic Center. It's all stuff that's in your community that's been covered in the Beecher. There is me as the editor. There are 4 writers. There are 2 correspondents and 2 photographers. And so we put that together every week. We sort of have a build up to Thursday. We put the whole thing together. We send it to the press Friday morning, and then it goes out by delivery next week. So the past 1.5 years has been the most interesting, because when COVID hit and everything started to close, I'm sitting here thinking, what are we going to do? Because we're a what to do publication and there is absolutely nothing to do. You know, everything is canceled. What the heck are we going to write about? So I had to kind of take stock and saying, how are we going to be a community newspaper in the middle of a pandemic? And so we started to being at ground zero. It was sort of, okay, what's closed and what's canceling? And then as people figured out restaurant wise, how are we going to still get food out? We ran a directory of every restaurant in Michigan City and LaPorte and who had delivery, who had carry out, and who was curbside service. Then I do movie reviews for the section, and I never really reviewed on streaming services like Netflix and stuff like that. And then my wife was the one who said, we're all trapped at home. What are people going to do? Start reviewing stuff that's on Netflix. So we started doing that. My first Netflix review was the miniseries Tiger King, if you've ever seen that, which was one huge train wreck of a miniseries about a big cat rescue plant that actually brought their show up to Marquette Mall at Michigan City, which I forgot that my wife had scrapbook pictures of my son with one of the Tiger King kitties. I don't know if that was something to be proud of or not. But so then we started reviewing stuff that was streaming, and then everyone started to adapt. I mean, what we have here is a sign of how we've adapted, is that we learned about Zoom. We learned about how we can still do these programs online. And we had canceled our activities calendar. And then suddenly we realized, no, we can put the activities back in. It may not be at a location. It's going through Zoom. Michigan City Public Library adapted quickly. Everything was going on Zoom that way. And so, as I said to the writers too, there's always going to be people with a good story to tell. I don't care if it's a pandemic or not. Everyone's got a good story to tell. And so we found people to interview. And we realized that you can still do the interviews over the phone. You know, you don't have to do them in person. And we did just fine until the first week of December, when, for reasons I still don't know, I contracted COVID. And so I didn't think I had it because I didn't have the loss of taste of smell. I didn't have the aches and chills. I had extreme exhaustion, but I thought maybe it's just some bug, and got tested. And we had literally, I actually got to say, you know, start the presses. The Beecher started and I got the ding on my phone. It says you have positive for COVID. So I thought, okay, how are we going to do this? And again, it's another example of technology coming into play. I worked at home. They emailed everything I needed to edit to me at home. I edited back to them and they put it together. And so we still managed to put a Beecher together. It was not very hard. Has anyone in here had COVID? Okay, so you know how exhausting it is. It was the week that the miniseries The Crown had just wrapped up, and I was going to do a review on it. And I just sat at the computer with no energy, and I realized that I'd been asleep for 20 minutes, just staring at the keyboard going, how am I going to write this? And they're saying, you got to get something, we got to fill this Beecher. And so but we did it. And I'm blessed with such amazing staff that, you know, the writers and the photographers were all saying, hey, look, if any ad revenue is down, we'll write for free during the pandemic. We don't care. And I said, I'm moved by that, but I don't want you to feel that your time is any less, that you wouldn't be paid. And so I always said to my bosses during the pandemic that if we're consistent, if we still get out there, we'll still be around a year from now. And come Memorial Day, there was like no transition from dead, nothing going on. And the Memorial Day weekend, the advertising just poured back in. I think it was a combination. We're all getting vaccinated. Comfort levels are, you know, somewhat returning to normal, if that's ever going to happen. And the advertising has just been steady. And so the community has continued to support Anisha, where we're not only still around, we're doing great. So that's been wonderful, because I at one point thought, not that we were going to close, but I thought, how are we going to keep this up? But it survived. So we're looking at a publication that in one way or form has been around for 100 years in 3 different incarnations, and it's still here because the community supports it. It's a niche product that is supported by the people in the city and all these beach communities, and it's still here. So it's been an absolute joy to work for them. It's been a joy to cover things going on. I know that we had a big piece about Rotary's anniversary that one of our writers did. And we continue to publicize events related to Rotary Scholarship and the Alinsky Award. And I know that Lance sends us press releases from time to time about things going on at the Acorn. And so whether we get back to normal because of COVID, I can't tell you, but I do know that life goes on and the quality of life continues, and the support of the Beecher and the Beecher support of the community has just been amazing. So I don't know if you have any questions about the Beecher, about what we do, or.
Your publication goes out free to
Mhm.
the audience.
Yes.
I have a first cousin's family that has a newspaper in Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Okay.
But it's a typical murder. They have a newspaper, but they don't charge any subscription.
Huh.
Have you heard of any other newspapers that do that?
Mm-mm. Not newspapers. I haven't. That's interesting.
They went your route.
They did.
Still on murder.
Yeah, and you know what? And the thing is like people say to me, you fill a paper with just good news. You'd be surprised at how much good news comes your way. Yeah.
That's true.
You would be surprised how much, you know, and it is, I don't have to buy a bottle of Tums anymore. You know, I mean, working in newspapers will give you heartburn. I mean, and seriously, and the reality is, you know, there's an old newspaper saying, if it bleeds, it leads. And it's still true in newspapers, meaning that crime and terrible news is still what sells newspapers. But the thing is that the people who are involved in putting those newspapers together can either grow numb to it, where it doesn't phase them, or it does take its toll. And so when I became a father in 2006, reading all these horrible headlines and editing all these horrible stories was starting to take its toll on me. Because I just didn't want, I mean, it's not that I didn't want to know it exists. I was constantly assaulted by it. And so the fact that the Beecher is still here, it's a good news publication, and it's the advertising that supports it. I'm still boggles my mind that this paper is, you know, we're not the norm.
We appreciate it.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that, Lance.
Not to put you on the spot, but I do like to put people on the spot.
Ruh-roh.
Would you possibly consider a story about Patrick Carroll?
Oh, about what you're doing? Sure.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And I am vaccinated. So, yeah,
What was the circulation numbers again?
4,100. Well, you know, here's something interesting, and this isn't, it seems small, but the general rule of thumb with newspapers is multiply that figure times 2, because in the average, you've got 2 people per household that are seeing your publication, you know, maybe more. So what you're really looking at is about 8,000 people that are seeing it. Now, part of the problem is that because it's so small, we do not deliver to homes in Michigan City. It's just strictly to the beach communities. And, you know, and we also have these places in LaPorte that it goes to. So the reality is that's based on how many homes and businesses were dropped off at. But how many people are actually seeing it? But I mean, newspapers have taken a toll. This is not, just to give you an idea, I mean, this is not a hit at my former employer, but when I started at the News Dispatch in 1996, the circulation was 14,400. So you figure multiply that by 2, you're almost at 29,000, and the population at the time was 32,000. So you're hitting your target audience. So the latest audit figures for the News Dispatch put their circulation at 3,600. Now, that was before the merger with the Herald Argus. So, but that is before the 2 papers merged. So technically, but that was a daily, or 4 times a day, week. Their circulation was below the Beecher. it's a rough time for newspapers. That's why the fact that the Beecher is still around, supported by the advertisers in the community, it's not something I take lightly. And like I said, we are not going to win a Pulitzer Prize. We are not going to rock the journalism world, but it's what I call news you can use. What am I going to do on the weekend? Oh, look, there's something at Acorn Theater. I think I'll go over there. Oh, wait a minute, there's something at Barker Civic Center, you know, or there's something going on out at La Lumiere. You know, and La Lumiere just called and they said, you know what, we just had someone at open house that's coming because they liked that you advertised in the Beecher. So count us in for the rest of the year. You know, the Acorn Theater hadn't advertised the whole time I was there, and then they started and they're like, hey, we want to keep going. They're going to keep advertising. So that's been a treat. It really has. And I can go home and put my head on my pillow and not worry about what I've been exposed to news-wise or what I have to deal with. It's a joy to work there and write and edit about what's going in the paper. It really is. Bruce.
We've done so many reviews for movies and things like that.
Mhm.
Is there one movie or one series that struck you as being a feel-good movie that
Feel
anyone
good.
could watch with their family and end up saying, that's really a good.
The Queen's Gambit. Did you guys see that?
Briefly,
Yeah, it was suddenly like it was a return to just what watching movies or TV is about. It's a good story with a good method, with good performances. Now, who has not seen The Queen's Gambit? Okay, so it's not a true story. It's about a female chess prodigy and who is orphaned and then is taken in by a woman who really isn't so much a mother, but a sort of a partner, and how she kind of maneuvers through the chess world, fighting sexism, but more importantly, finding out who she is and what she wants out of life. I mean, we just could not, we couldn't stop binging it on Netflix. And, you know, it was like early in the year when we'd seen Tiger King, my wife had said, I hope this is what the pandemic has in store for us, that this is what we're going to watch, because I don't want my kid really exposed to this. And so we had Will leave the room. So, but that's probably the best thing that, that I've seen. That was good stuff. Jim.
How, you know, I don't live in Michigan City or
Mhm.
the beach. How can I get the beach? Do I have to go over to the store, find it?
So where do you live? I'm not meaning your exact address. I just,
I live between Michigan City and Fort Springfield Township.
Springfield
Around
Township.
35 and 20.
Okay. The gas station right there at 35.
Okay, the Speedway?
Yeah, the Speedway. We're there. Well, we're at the Owls in LaPorte.
You can also go online.
And then the interesting thing is that the full edition, you can go on the website and there's the cover and you click on it and you pull up exactly what you're seeing. The website is only 400 views daily, but the Facebook page is 4,000 views daily. So that's how we can track input immediately. If like people like a story, if they don't like it. We had a story about Mickey Gallus as part of the Long Beach centennial anniversary, about people who were part of the community. And that story, I think, got shared 18 times and had over 12,000 views. So Facebook is the great way to find out, are you doing stuff people like, or if you don't like, and if you don't like, if they don't like it, people aren't really rude or obnoxious. They'll just flat out say, you know what, I didn't this kind of bothered me, that kind of thing. It's a great way to have instant feedback. In fact, we have an advertiser in Michiana Shores who just paid just to have the ad on the Facebook page, so it would get shared with readers. Yeah. Well, it's, yeah,
I know it's a running joke, but
sure.
there's so many different ways that your name is
Oh,
mispronounced.
mispronounced? Tackleson, Jackson, Tacklestein, Tallahassee. Yeah, it's a running joke. And my son, my last name is Norwegian. And we have relatives. One spelling, because there's a department store in our hometown in Arendelle, Norway. It's Talekson. If they just would have left that, when they came to Ellis Island, it sounds just like it's spelled. And then the other version is Tollofson, which is Tollofson, which I have a feeling that that's what went through Ellis Island. They went, no way, we're not. But my name is constantly butchered. And so my son, on one of his sports jerseys, it says, they printed the shirt as Tal Jackson, TALJACKS, and it's my header on my Facebook page. We kept it because how often are you going to get something like that, So, and I have to tell you an interesting story. It's the one time, and I don't want try to avoid sounding political. But there's no way around it. Is that when the election hit last year, someone took out a 2-page ad in support of Trump. Now, whether or not I support the president has no bearing to me on advertising. What I think is irrelevant, I believe that if someone wants to express their views, so be it. So we ran the ad and we said, this is a paid advertisement, and this is where this is coming to the name, is that people wanted my head on the chopping block. I mean, they wanted me fired, they wanted me gone, and then one of the callers says, now I want to know if you're an American, because your name does not look American. So I said, no, you're correct. It is Norwegian. And I apologize about that. And, and I'm not going to tell you who I voted for, but I said, it's not who you think it is. I said, but she said that what I had done was un-American. And I said to her, ma'am, to prohibit free speech because I don't agree with it is about as un-American as you can possibly get. And I would rather have my head hitting the pillow knowing I did the right thing than to have banished an ad because I didn't agree with it. And believe me, whether we need the money or not was irrelevant. I just knew that whoever I voted for had no bearing on what they wanted to express. So, but I must have sounded like a total foreigner with Talixon to the woman who called, because she said, you don't sound American. So, and I said,
When my grandfather came to Alex, he was saying Samarska.
okay.
And they changed it to Summers.
Summers, yeah, I could see.
No, that's Serbian.
Serbian.
My grandfather was Croatian, and you can't cross that line. Don't cross that line.
And I have to share real quickly, because we've got John on here. So John's son, Henry, was one of my best friends in college. We both went to IU, and we were on the same dorm floor his senior year, my freshman year, and he would a lot of times give me a ride back to Michigan City. And I was also Henry's first eye exam. He had to do an eye exam when he was in graduate school, and it was a 3.5-hour eye exam. And I still tease Henry about that because it was about as thorough as you can get. And of course, being the nerd that I am, it was the night the Oscars were on, and I'm starting to look at my watch going, come on, Henry, wrap it up. But he had to, there was a whole checklist of everything they wanted Henry to do. And so, and one of the reasons why, when I was at a smaller paper, when they said the job was a News Dispatch in Michigan City, I wanted to be up because I knew Henry and his family were here. So it's good to see you, John. John is, are you guys permanently down there now?
No, we're still up here. We just go down.
Okay. Okay. He's just
You didn't want to get out of bed this morning.
yeah. So are there any other questions? Thanks, man. Thanks. Absolutely.
Yes, welcome back to Rotary. All right, next week we are meeting at the Salvation Army because we're meeting with the Strive students, and there are going to be too many of them to fit in this room and still be social distanced. Okay, so we're going to move over to the Salvation Army, have a bigger space. We have room in there, so don't forget. I will send an email. I will send a text to remind you. I'll even wait Thursday morning and send another text and say, don't forget today. Don't go to Patrick's. Go to Salvation Army. And then I'll probably show up here, but that's another story. So I'll try to get over there and get it done right. Anybody else got any questions?
We need an RSVP for next week. Or
It's going to be buffet. They're going to cater from here over to there. Okay. Anybody else? If not, we are adjourned and I will see you next week. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, Tim.
See you later, John.